Tech CEO mocks a poor mother at her job interview, but everything changed when he saw the triplets. The color drained from Erik Alfred's face as he stared at the woman standing in his conference room. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "You have triplets?" Amanda Herbert's jaw tightened. She'd spent 20 minutes being destroyed by this man. 20 minutes of him dissecting her resume like it was a joke. 20 minutes of casual cruelty about her 7-year gap, her freelance work, her choices. And now he wanted to know about her children. Yes, 3 children, born prematurely at 32 weeks. I've raised them alone since the day I found out I was pregnant. Erik's hand gripped the edge of the conference table. How old are they? 7. They just turned 7 last month. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda watched him do the math, watched his eyes go wide, watched the exact moment he realized what he'd done, who she was, what this meant. 7 years ago. His voice cracked. Where were you living 7 years and 9 months ago? Amanda felt her heart pounding in her chest. She'd searched for this man once, spent 3 desperate months trying to find him with nothing but a first name and a city. She'd given up, built a life, survived, and now, here he stood, the father of her children, the man who'd just told her she was a liability. San Francisco. I was working at Whitmore Tech. There was a developers conference that September, a rooftop bar at the Four Seasons. Erik sank into his chair like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. It was you, the woman in the green dress. We talked about machine learning. You were drinking champagne even though you said you didn't usually drink. I left the next morning. I had an early flight. I didn't even get your last name. Amanda's voice turned to ice. No, you didn't. You left a note that said thanks for last night, like I was a hotel service you'd used. And then 6 weeks later, I saw 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Then 3 heartbeats on an ultrasound. Then 3 tiny babies fighting for their lives in incubators while I sat alone in a hospital wondering how I was going to survive. But before we go any further into this moment that's about to destroy everything Erik Alfred thought he knew about his life, you need to understand how we got here. Because this story isn't just about a one-night stand coming back to haunt a billionaire. This is about a woman who survived the unsurvivable, a man who measured human worth in dollar signs, and 3 children who deserved better than both of their origin stories. If you've ever been dismissed by someone who knew nothing about your struggle, if you've ever had to prove yourself to people who decided you weren't enough before you even opened your mouth, you're going to want to hear this. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Mr. Kingsley Luck's stories, because we tell the truth about survival, redemption, and what happens when powerful people finally face the consequences of their cruelty. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated? Because Amanda Herbert has been underestimated her entire life, but she's about to make Erik Alfred understand exactly what that cost her. Now let me take you back to where this really started. 2 weeks before that conference room confrontation. 2 weeks before Erik Alfred's world exploded. Amanda stood outside the gleaming glass tower of Alfred Technologies, staring up at 47 floors of steel and ambition. Her hands were shaking. She shoved them into the pockets of her navy suit. The suit she'd bought secondhand 3 days ago from a consignment shop in downtown Seattle. The suit she'd steamed carefully in her tiny bathroom while her triplets ate cereal for dinner because she didn't have time to cook. This job could change everything. Senior algorithm developer, $83,000 a year, benefits, stability, the kind of salary that meant her 7-year-old son Jasper could finally get the occupational therapy his teachers kept recommending. The kind of money that meant her daughter Mia and her other son Oliver could have new shoes instead of hand-me-downs from the community center donation bin. Amanda checked her phone. 2:54. Her interview was at 3. She'd left the triplets with Mrs. Chen, her elderly neighbor who charged half what she should because she understood what it meant to choose between childcare and keeping the lights on. She walked into the lobby. Marble floors, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A reception desk that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. The receptionist looked up. Her smile was polite but cool. The kind of smile that said she'd already decided Amanda didn't belong here. "Miss Herbert, for Erik Alfred?" "Yes, I have a 3 o'clock interview. Conference room 3, down the hall. Last door on your right." Amanda walked down a corridor lined with abstract art. She'd been in buildings like this before. 7 years ago, when she was 21 and fresh out of MIT and the tech world, had seemed full of possibility. Before 3 positive pregnancy tests. Before 63 days in a NICU watching her babies fight for every breath. Before she learned that the industry she loved had no space for mothers who needed flexibility and understanding. The conference room door was open. Amanda paused outside, took a breath, smoothed her skirt. She'd practiced her presentation 17 times, memorized every line of code in her portfolio, prepared for questions about her skills, her vision, her approach to problem solving. She wasn't prepared for Erik Alfred. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the Seattle skyline like he owned it. Expensive jeans, fitted button-down that probably cost $600, dark hair perfectly cut. He didn't turn when she entered. That small act of dismissal told Amanda everything she needed to know about how this interview would go. "Miss Herbert, you're late." Amanda glanced at her phone. 2:58. "I'm 2 minutes early, actually. My interview is scheduled for 3 o'clock. Erik turned. His eyes scanned her with the kind of cold assessment usually reserved for broken equipment. "My time is valuable. When I schedule a 3 o'clock interview, I expect candidates to arrive at 2:45. It shows initiative." He gestured to a chair, didn't sit himself. The power play was obvious. Him standing, her sitting, him looking down, her looking up. Amanda sat. She needed this job more than she needed her pride. Erik picked up a tablet and scrolled through it with visible skepticism. "Your resume is interesting. MIT for undergrad. Impressive. A brief stint at Whitmore Tech 7 years ago. Also impressive. Then nothing. 7 years of absolute nothing. Care to explain that gap?" "I was raising my children. I did freelance coding work from home, which I've documented in my portfolio. I also developed 3 apps independently, all of which are detailed in my application materials." Freelance work. Erik said it like she'd confessed to a crime. And apps that generated what kind of revenue? Minimal revenue. They were primarily designed to solve accessibility issues for children with sensory processing challenges. The goal wasn't profit. It was functionality. How noble. The sarcasm could have cut glass. "But Miss Herbert, we're not a charity. We're a company that generated $2.3 billion in revenue last year. I need developers who understand that our goal is profit, not, what did you call it? Functionality for children with challenges?" The way he said children with challenges made Amanda's hands clench in her lap. She thought of Jasper, brilliant and beautiful and struggling every day with a world that was too loud, too bright, too much. She thought of the app she'd built specifically for him, a communication tool that used color coding and gentle sounds instead of harsh notifications. She thought of the 300 families who'd downloaded it for free and sent her messages saying it changed their lives. "With respect, Mr. Alfred, functionality and profit aren't mutually exclusive. The accessibility features I built into those apps demonstrate an understanding of user experience that could be applied to any product. The coding is complex and efficient and solves real problems. That's what good development looks like, regardless of revenue generated." Erik sat down, leaned back in his chair with casual arrogance. "You know what I see when I look at your resume? I see someone who had potential 7 years ago and threw it away. I see someone who chose, what, motherhood, over their career. And now you're here desperate for a job, probably desperate for the salary, expecting me to take a chance on someone who's 7 years behind the curve in an industry that evolves every 6 months." Each word landed like a physical blow. Amanda felt her face flush, felt the familiar shame of having her choices judged by someone who'd never had to make them. Choices that weren't really choices at all when you were alone and pregnant with 3 babies and terrified. "I'm not behind the curve. I've kept current with every major development in machine learning, algorithm optimization, and user interface design. I taught myself 4 new programming languages while working full-time as a parent. My portfolio speaks for itself." "Your portfolio shows that you built apps for children and did some basic freelance work. That's not the same as contributing to a team building enterprise-level solutions for Fortune 500 clients." Erik stood up. The interview was clearly over in his mind. "Miss Herbert, I appreciate you coming in, but I think we both know you're not a fit for Alfred Technologies. We need developers who are committed, who can work late hours when necessary, who don't have complications, single mothers with young children, and I'm assuming you're single given the complete absence of any partner mentioned in your background check. They're not known for their reliability." Something inside Amanda snapped. She'd spent 7 years swallowing dismissals, 7 years accepting that the world saw her as less than because she dared to be both brilliant and a mother. But Erik Alfred's casual cruelty, his absolute certainty that he understood her life, her choices, her worth, it broke something that had been bending too long. Amanda stood slowly. You're right about one thing. I am a single mother. I have 3 7-year-old children who I've raised alone since the day they were born. And you're right that it's been hard, that I've made sacrifices, that there are things I couldn't do because I was choosing to be present for my kids instead of climbing some corporate ladder. She picked up her bag, gathered the portfolio materials she'd never gotten to present. But Mr. Alfred, what you don't see, what men like you never see, is that those 7 years made me better at everything I do. I learned to solve complex problems with limited resources. I learned to optimize every single hour because I didn't have time to waste. I learned to build systems that actually work for real people because I am real people, not some tech bro playing at innovation from a penthouse office. Erik's expression shifted from dismissive to surprised. Probably no one had spoken to him like this in years. I came here hoping for an opportunity. What I found was exactly what I should have expected. Another powerful man who thinks a woman's worth is measured by how closely she mirrors his own privileged path. So thank you for making it clear that Alfred Technologies isn't where I belong. I'll find somewhere that values actual talent over performative masculinity. Amanda walked toward the door. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking with adrenaline and the terrifying knowledge that she'd just destroyed her best job prospect in months. She'd have to tell Mrs. Chen she couldn't pay her this week. She'd have to figure out how to explain to the triplets why they couldn't go to the museum this weekend like she'd promised. But before she reached the hallway, Erik's voice stopped her. You have triplets? And that's when everything changed. Amanda turned slowly. Erik's face had shifted. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like concern, almost like panic. Yes, 3 children, born prematurely at 32 weeks. I've raised them alone since the day I found out I was pregnant. How old are they? 7. They just turned 7 last month. Erik's face went pale. He sat down heavily. 7 years ago. Where were you living then? 7 years and 9 months ago? Amanda's stomach dropped. She knew where this was going. Knew it with the terrible certainty of a story she tried very hard to forget. San Francisco. I was working at Whitmore Tech. I'd been there about 8 months when I found out about the pregnancy. There was a developers conference in San Francisco 8 years ago. September. 4 Seasons downtown. I was at that conference. Whitmore sent their whole development team. Erik's hands were shaking now. There was a party on the last night. The rooftop bar. Amanda remembered. God, she remembered. Champagne and city lights. A stranger who'd seemed charming and interested. Who'd listened to her talk about her work like it actually mattered. Who'd made her feel seen in a way that was intoxicating after years of being invisible. One night, one terrible decision made by a 21-year-old who was lonely and flattered and too drunk to recognize red flags. She'd woken up alone. A note on hotel stationery. Thanks for last night. Nothing else. No number. No last name beyond Erik. No suggestion that she'd been anything more than convenient. It was you. Erik's voice was hollow. At the rooftop bar. We talked about machine learning applications and user interface design. You were drinking champagne, even though you said you didn't usually drink. You were wearing a green dress. Hunter green. I sold it to a consignment shop when I needed money for diapers. I left early the next morning. I had a flight back to Seattle. You didn't think about me at all. I was a one-night stand. Forgettable. Disposable. Just like you clearly think I am now. The triplets, are they mine? The question hung between them. Sharp and terrible. Amanda had imagined this conversation 100 different ways over 7 years. She'd practiced what she'd say, how she'd demand acknowledgement, support, responsibility. But she'd never imagined it happening like this, in a conference room where he'd just spent 20 minutes destroying her for choices his absence had forced her to make. Yes, they're biologically yours. In every single way that actually matters, they're mine alone. I raised them. I sat in the NICU for 63 days watching them fight for every breath while you were where? Building your empire? Not thinking about the woman you fucked and forgot? Erik flinched. I didn't know. You have to believe me. I didn't know. I tried to find you. For 3 months I tried. But you were just Erik from Seattle, who works in tech. Do you know how many Eriks work in Seattle Tech? I couldn't afford a private investigator. I could barely afford rent. So I gave up, and I built a life for my children without you. What are their names? The question was quiet, broken. Amanda hesitated. Giving him their names felt like giving him access, like letting him into the fortress she'd built around her small family. Jasper, Mia, and Oliver. Jasper is 7 minutes older, then Mia, then Oliver. They're brilliant and funny and complicated and perfect. And they've done just fine without you. I want to meet them. Absolutely not. Erik looked startled. They're my children. They're my children. You're a sperm donor who happened to show up 7 years too late. You don't get to walk into their lives just because you finally put together that the woman you were mocking 20 minutes ago is the mother of your children. That's not fair. Fair? Amanda's laugh was sharp and humorless. You want to talk about fair? You just spent 20 minutes telling me I threw away my potential, that I'm unreliable because I'm a single mother, that my 7 years of sacrifice mean I'm behind the curve and not worth your time. You dismissed me, insulted my choices, and made it clear that women like me don't belong in your world. And now you want me to give you access to my children because suddenly fatherhood sounds interesting? Before we find out whether Erik can possibly make this right, whether any apology could be enough, whether Amanda will even consider letting this man near her children, I need to hear from you. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Erik deserves to meet these triplets? Or did his cruelty in that interview cost him that right forever? Because what happens next will test everything you believe about second chances and accountability. Share this video with someone who's ever been judged unfairly. And make sure you're subscribed because the second half of this story will show you what real transformation looks like, or whether some mistakes are simply too big to fix. Hashtag part 2, 2,500 words. I didn't know. Erik repeated like it was a defense. And you still treated me like garbage. Amanda's voice cut through his excuse. You didn't know, and you still looked at a struggling mother and decided she was worthless. What does that say about you, Mr. Alfred? What does it say that your first instinct was cruelty, not curiosity? That you judged my entire life without knowing anything about it? Erik put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed. His composure completely shattered. You're right. Everything you said is right. I was arrogant and cruel and dismissive. I made assumptions based on nothing but my own prejudice. I destroyed you in that interview because I saw someone who didn't fit my narrow definition of success, and I couldn't see past my own privilege. Is this the part where you apologize and expect forgiveness? Because I've got 3 kids waiting for me at home who need dinner and help with homework and bedtime stories. I don't have time for your crisis of conscience. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to meet my children, to know them, to what? Amanda interrupted. To play dad when it's convenient? To show up for the fun parts and disappear when it gets hard? To give them a taste of what it's like to have a father and then break their hearts when you get bored or your company demands too much time? I wouldn't do that. You don't know what you'd do, because you've never had to put anyone else first. You've never had to choose between your career and being present. You've never had to sacrifice anything real. Amanda picked up her bag again. Miss Herbert. Amanda, please, just wait. Why? Amanda turned back exhausted. Why should I wait? Give me one good reason why I should let you anywhere near my kids. Erik was quiet for a long moment, visibly struggling. When he spoke, his voice was raw with something that sounded almost like honesty. Because they deserve to know where they come from. Because maybe I can give them things you can't. Not better things, but different things. Resources, opportunities, a connection to part of their identity. Because I want to try even though I have no right to ask. Because 8 years ago I was a careless asshole who treated you like you were disposable, and I want the chance to prove I'm not that person anymore. Are you that person? Because 20 minutes ago, you sure seemed like you were. 20 minutes ago, you were dismissing a brilliant developer because she dared to be a mother. That's the same carelessness, just in a different package. You're right. I am still that person. But I don't want to be. Seeing you here, realizing what I did, what I missed, what I destroyed with my arrogance, it's making me see myself clearly for the first time in years. And I hate what I see. Amanda studied him. This powerful man reduced to something smaller, more human, more broken. She'd fantasized about this moment, about him finally understanding the cost of his absence. But the reality wasn't satisfying. It was just sad. I need time. Time to process this. Time to figure out what's best for my children, not what's convenient for you. Time to decide if you're even capable of being what they'd need from a father. How much time? As much as I need. You don't get to set the timeline here, Erik. You don't get to demand anything. If and when I decide you can meet them, I'll contact you. Until then, you stay away from us. Amanda pulled a business card from her bag. Simple card with her name, email, and phone number. Printed cheaply because that's all she could afford. This is how you reach me. Not through your assistant, not through your lawyers. You want to be part of this, you do the work yourself. And Erik, if you contact me before I'm ready, if you try to push this or pressure me, or use your money and power to force your way into their lives, I will disappear so completely you'll never find us. Do you understand? I understand. Good. For what it's worth, I hope you've changed. I hope you're capable of being better than you were 8 years ago, better than you were 20 minutes ago. But hope doesn't raise children. Showing up does. So if you're serious about this, about them, then be prepared to show up. Consistently, even when it's inconvenient. Even when work is demanding, even when it's hard. Because that's what parenting is, showing up anyway. Amanda left. Walked through the gleaming hallways of Alfred Technologies with her second-hand suit and her cheap business cards and her 7 years of survival that this building's owner had dismissed as worthless. In the parking garage, she sat in her 15-year-old Honda and shook. Not with tears, though those would come later. With rage and relief and the terrible realization that the father of her children was exactly the kind of man she'd hoped he wasn't. She drove home through Seattle traffic, her mind spinning through implications and possibilities and logistics. The triplets were waiting at Mrs. Chen's apartment, probably covered in the finger paint she'd promised as an afternoon activity. When Amanda picked them up, they rushed her with chaotic energy. "Mama, I made you a picture," Mia announced, holding up paper covered in orange and purple swirls. "It's beautiful, baby. What is it?" "It's feelings," Mia explained seriously. "Orange for happy, purple for confused." "I made a city," Oliver added, showing his paper covered in careful rectangles. "See? Buildings and roads and a park. Very impressive." Amanda meant it. Oliver's spatial reasoning was exceptional. Jasper stood slightly apart, hands over his ears. Mrs. Chen's apartment was louder than he preferred. The television and her visiting grandchildren all mixing into overwhelming noise. Amanda crouched to his level, ready to go home to the quiet. He nodded, removed his hands long enough to sign thank you to Mrs. Chen, who'd learned basic sign language to communicate with him when he was overwhelmed. That night, after dinner and homework and elaborate bedtime routines, Amanda sat at her laptop and did what she should have done 7 years ago, when searching had seemed impossible. She Googled Erik Alfred. The results were extensive. Tech prodigy who'd built Alfred Technologies from a 2-person startup to a global company in 12 years. Youngest CEO on Forbes' most influential list. Philanthropist who donated millions to STEM education. Bachelor who appeared at charity galas with rotating beautiful companions. There were interviews about his work philosophy, his vision for technology's future, his belief in disrupting systems that didn't serve users. He sounded intelligent, passionate, visionary. But there was nothing about the man who dismissed a single mother in a job interview. Nothing about the person who'd looked at 7 years of sacrifice and seen only failure. Amanda found his social media. Carefully curated images of product launches and team celebrations and exotic travel. A life that looked perfect and empty in equal measure. Under one photo from 6 months ago, she found a comment thread. "When are you settling down, Erik? Time to find a good woman and start a family." His response made her pause. Not everyone's path includes traditional family structures. Some of us are meant to build other things. Amanda closed the laptop, something bitter settling in her chest. He'd convinced himself he wasn't the family type, built an entire identity around being married to his work, and now confronted with 3 children he'd accidentally created, he was having an identity crisis. She wasn't interested in managing his crisis. She was barely managing her own life. 2 days later, an envelope arrived at her apartment. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a single handwritten note. "Amanda, this isn't payment or apology or obligation. This is acknowledgement that I failed you and them for 7 years. Use it however you need. I'm not trying to buy my way into their lives. I'm trying to be accountable for my absence. I'll wait to hear from you when you're ready. Erik." Amanda stared at the check. $50,000. More money than she'd made in the last 2 years combined. Money that could mean occupational therapy for Jasper. A real apartment with bedrooms instead of shared spaces. Stability instead of constant crisis. But accepting it meant accepting Erik into their lives in some capacity. She called her best friend Kendra. He sent money. How much money? $50,000. Kendra whistled. That's not sorry I forgot to call money. That's I'm serious about this money. Or it's, I'm rich enough that this doesn't matter to me money. Does the motivation matter if the result is Jasper gets the therapy he needs? Yes, Amanda said. No, I don't know. Kendra, I'm so angry at him. For the interview, for 8 years ago, for being exactly the kind of privileged asshole I knew he probably was. But he's their father. Don't they deserve to know him? They deserve to know a father who won't hurt them. Can you trust him to be that? I don't know. Amanda texted Erik that night. I'm cashing the check. Consider it 7 years of child support you should have been paying. It doesn't buy you access or forgiveness, but we can talk about supervised visitation. I'll contact you in 2 weeks with parameters. His response came immediately. Thank you. I'll be ready whenever you are. Those 2 weeks became investigation. Amanda hired a background check service. Called former colleagues who'd gone to work in Seattle Tech. Asked careful questions about Alfred Technologies' culture, Erik's reputation, whether he was known for following through on commitments. The picture that emerged was complicated. Erik was demanding, occasionally harsh, absolutely committed to excellence, but also known for fairness, for promoting from within, for taking chances on unconventional candidates. Not a monster, not a saint, just a man. Flawed, driven, capable of both cruelty and growth. On the 14th day, Amanda texted him an address and time. Volunteer Park, Saturday, 10 a.m. Come alone. Dress casually. Be prepared to answer questions from 3 7-year-olds who are smarter than both of us combined. Amanda had told the triplets they were meeting someone important, someone who'd been missing from their lives. Is it our dad? Oliver had asked immediately, his analytical mind making connections. Amanda had decided she wouldn't lie to them. Yes, it's your biological father. He didn't know about you until very recently. Now he wants to meet you, if you want to meet him. Where was he before? Mia had asked. Living his life not knowing you existed. Why didn't you tell him? Jasper had signed. His preferred method for complicated topics. I tried. I couldn't find him. Then later I thought maybe it was better to just be us. But now he knows and you deserve the choice about whether you want him in your life. The triplets had huddled together discussing in whispers Amanda couldn't quite hear. Finally, they'd agreed. They wanted to meet him. They wanted to know where they came from. Saturday morning, Amanda stood at the park entrance watching Erik approach from the parking lot. He'd followed instructions. Jeans and a sweater instead of expensive tailoring. Alone instead of accompanied by assistants. He looked nervous. The triplets flanked Amanda. Oliver holding her hand. Mia gripping her other side. Jasper slightly behind where he felt safest. Erik stopped about 10 feet away, like he understood that closing the distance uninvited would be wrong. Hi. His voice was uncertain. Hi, Amanda replied. Then to the triplets. This is Erik Alfred. Erik, these are your children. Oliver, Mia, and Jasper. Erik's eyes moved across them. Amanda saw the moment he recognized himself in their features. Oliver's dark eyes and serious expression. Mia's smile and face shape. Jasper's careful analytical observation. You're beautiful. Erik's voice was thick. All 3 of you. I'm so sorry I wasn't there before. Why weren't you there? Oliver asked directly. At 7, he had no patience for adult evasion. Erik crouched down, bringing himself to their eye level. I made a mistake a long time ago. I didn't know your mom was pregnant. If I had known, I would have. He trailed off, seeming to realize should have and would have meant nothing to children who'd lived 7 years without him. I messed up, he said instead. I missed 7 years of knowing you. And I can't change that. But I'd like to know you now if you're willing to give me that chance. What do you know about dragons? Mia asked. Her criteria for judging adults apparently based on fantasy knowledge. Not much, but I'd love to learn. Do you know about architecture? Oliver pressed. Some. I studied structural engineering in college. Oliver's eyes lit up. Do you know about cantilevers? I do. They're structural elements that project horizontally into space supported only on one end. Exactly. Oliver was excited to find someone who spoke his language. Jasper hadn't said anything, just watched Erik with careful attention. Amanda knew her quietest child was also her most perceptive, the one who read people like other kids read books. Erik seemed to sense this. He looked at Jasper. "You don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. I'm told I can be overwhelming. Take whatever time you need." It was exactly the right thing to say. Jasper's shoulders relaxed slightly. He signed, "Thank you." "You're welcome." Erik signed back. Amanda's eyebrows rose. "You know sign language?" "I learned the basics this week. I thought it might help." Despite everything, the anger, the hurt, the 7 years of absence, Amanda felt something shift. He'd done research. He'd prepared. He'd tried to meet Jasper where he was instead of expecting Jasper to accommodate him. "Can we play at the playground?" Mia asked, already eyeing the climbing structure. "If your mom says it's okay." Erik looked to Amanda for permission. She nodded. "Go ahead. Stay where I can see you." The triplets ran off. Amanda and Erik stood together watching 3 children who connected them in the most complicated way possible. "They're incredible," Erik said quietly. "I know. You did that. You raised them alone. Made them feel safe and loved and confident. That's all you. Why are you being nice? 2 weeks ago you destroyed me in that interview. You made it clear that single mothers were unreliable, that my choices were failures, that I wasn't worth your time. What changed? Everything changed. Finding out they existed, realizing what I'd done, seeing myself clearly for the first time in years. Amanda, I was exactly who you said I was. Arrogant, privileged, dismissive. I looked at your resume and saw only what was missing, not what was there. I judged you for choices I'd never had to make. And then I realized those choices created 3 human beings who wouldn't exist without you, who are thriving because of you. How could that be failure? Pretty words. You're good at those. I know. And I know words don't mean anything without action. So, I'm not asking you to forgive me or trust me or believe I've changed. I'm asking for the chance to prove it, to show up consistently even when it's hard, to be present in their lives in whatever capacity you'll allow. For the next hour, Amanda watched Erik interact with the triplets. He pushed them on swings, helped Oliver build an elaborate stick structure, listened to Mia's detailed Dragon Kingdom explanation, sat quietly with Jasper, who eventually warmed up enough to show him the smooth rocks he'd been collecting. Erik was good with them, patient, engaged, treating them like people instead of obligations. He asked questions and actually listened to answers. He let them set the pace of interaction instead of forcing connection. When it was time to leave, the triplets hugged Erik goodbye without hesitation. "Can we see you again?" Oliver asked. Erik looked to Amanda. "That's up to your mom." 3 pairs of eyes turned to her, waiting. "Next week. Same time. Same place. We'll see how it goes." The months that followed established a rhythm. Weekly visits at the park gradually expanding to include museums and aquariums and the science center. Erik showed up every time, often early, never canceling even when work was demanding. He learned their routines, their preferences, their individual quirks. Oliver needed time to warm up to new experiences. Mia was brave about everything except spiders. Jasper communicated most freely through drawing. Erik packed sensory-friendly snacks for Jasper, listened to Mia's elaborate stories without interruption, brought graph paper for Oliver's increasingly complex architectural designs. And slowly, carefully, Amanda's walls began to crack. It started with practical things. Erik offering to pay for Jasper's occupational therapy, not as a grand gesture but as quiet "let me help." Showing up at Oliver's science fair because Amanda mentioned it casually, learning to braid Mia's hair through YouTube tutorials and patient practice. Then it shifted to something more personal. Conversations after the kids played, talking about their separate lives, their different struggles. Erik describing the loneliness of success without connection. Amanda admitting how hard it had been to be strong all the time, to never let her children see her break. 6 months after that initial park meeting, Erik made an announcement during a Denver visit. They were having dinner at Amanda's apartment, something that had become routine. "I have some news. I've been restructuring my company, delegating more to my executive team. I've decided to open a Seattle satellite office that will let me work from here 3 weeks out of every month instead of just weekends." The triplets erupted into cheers. Amanda felt her heart rate increase. "That's a big change." It's the right change. My company can function without me micromanaging every decision. But Jasper and Mia and Oliver, they're only 7 once. I don't want to miss any more of their lives than I already have. 1 year after that disastrous job interview, Amanda stood in a very different conference room at Alfred Technologies. This time she wore a suit she'd bought new, tailored perfectly. This time the room was full of people who'd chosen to be there. She was signing a contract as senior algorithm developer with a salary that made her want to cry with relief. Erik had recused himself from the hiring decision. She'd been evaluated by an independent panel. 4 rounds of interviews. She'd been hired on merit. Not because of Erik, but despite him. "Congratulations," Erik said afterward when it was just them. "You earned this." "I know I did. But thank you for making sure the process was fair. Are you going to accept?" She heard the vulnerability in his question. Accepting meant staying in Seattle, meant building a life here, meant continuing whatever this complicated thing between them was becoming. "Yes, I'm going to accept." 6 months later, Erik asked Amanda to move in with him. Not to the penthouse downtown, but to a house he'd bought in a neighborhood with good schools and parks. A house with space for 3 children to have their own rooms, for Amanda to have a home office, for them to build a life together. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. We're not there yet, and I know that. I'm asking if you're ready to build something together, to stop living in 2 separate spaces and see what it looks like when we combine our lives for real." Amanda said yes, not because she needed his house or money or status, but because she'd finally reached the point where trusting him felt less dangerous than protecting herself from possibility. That night, after the children were asleep in their new bedrooms, Amanda and Erik sat on the back porch watching the sunset. "Are you happy?" Erik asked quietly. Amanda thought about the 7 years of struggle, of survival, of building a life from nothing. She thought about the interview where he'd destroyed her, the moment he'd realized who she was, every visit to the park, every time he'd shown up and proved himself. "Yes, I'm happy. Not just content, not just surviving. Actually happy. Good, that's all I want. For you and them to be happy. What about you? Are you happy?" "I'm happy. For the first time in my entire adult life, I'm actually happy. Not successful, not accomplished, not impressive. Just happy." 18 months after Amanda and the triplets moved into the house, Erik asked her to marry him. Quietly in their kitchen while cleaning up after dinner. "I want to make this official." He pulled out a simple ring. "I want you to be my wife legally and publicly and permanently. I want the triplets to know I'm committed to this family, to them, to you forever. Will you marry me?" Amanda looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the life they'd built together from wreckage. "Yes, but I have conditions." "Of course you do." Erik smiled. "Name them. I keep my own name. The kids can be Herbert Alfred if they want, but I'm staying Herbert." "Agreed. I keep my job, my career, my independence. This isn't about me being absorbed into your life. It's about building something together." "Absolutely agreed. And Erik, if you ever speak to another single mother the way you spoke to me in that interview, I will leave you so fast you won't know what happened. That's more than fair. I promise you I learned that lesson. I learned it the hardest way possible, and I'll never forget it. Then yes, I'll marry you." They married 6 months later. Small ceremony in their backyard with the triplets as the entire wedding party. Jasper carried the rings. Oliver read a poem he'd written. Mia scattered flower petals with enthusiastic abandon. Years later, when people asked Amanda how they'd met, she told the truth. "He mocked me at a job interview, then discovered I was raising his children alone and had to completely transform himself to earn the right to be in our lives. And when people asked Erik what changed him, he told the truth too. A brilliant woman showed me what real strength looked like, and I had to choose whether to stay comfortable in my arrogance or do the terrifying work of becoming better." Their story wasn't about redemption granted easily or forgiveness given cheaply. It was about consequences faced honestly and transformation earned through consistent effort. It was about a woman who survived everything and chose eventually to risk her heart on possibility. It was about a man who'd been careless with something precious and spent years learning to be careful instead. It was about 3 children who deserved a father and got one who showed up over and over until showing up became who he was instead of what he did. The story ended not with fireworks but with an ordinary Tuesday. Erik came home from work to find chaos. Mia covered in paint from an art project. Oliver frustrated about homework. Jasper overwhelmed by sounds. Amanda managing all three while debugging code for a work deadline. Erik didn't hesitate. He picked up Jasper and carried him to the quiet room they'd created. He helped Oliver work through the math problem. He helped Mia clean up paint. He ordered dinner because everyone was too tired to cook. Later, after the children were asleep, he found Amanda at her computer. "You okay?" Exhausted, overwhelmed, wondering how people with reasonable jobs do this. "You're doing great." Erik massaged her shoulders. "You're brilliant and exhausted and doing great. Am the first? You are. And I love you. And I'm grateful every single day that you gave me the chance to be here, to be part of this chaos, to be yours." Amanda saved her work, turned in her chair, pulled him down for a kiss. "I love you too, even when you're annoying, especially when I'm annoying, especially then." And that was the real ending. Not perfect, not easy, but real and hard-won and worth every difficult moment it took to build. A love story that started with cruelty and ended with kindness. A family built not on fairy tale promises but on the daily choice to show up and stay. A woman who survived and then bravely learned to do more than survive. A man who hurt someone carelessly and then painfully learned to love carefully instead. And 3 children who got the father they deserved because their mother was strong enough to risk believing in change. If this story moved you, if you believe in earned second chances and real transformation, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to know that mistakes don't have to be permanent, that people can choose differently and mean it. Subscribe to Mr. Kingsley Luck Stories because this is what we do here. We tell the truth about love and loss and the messy work of becoming better than we were. Drop a comment telling me what lesson hit you hardest. Was it that accountability matters more than apology? That survival is its own kind of strength? That love is a daily choice, not a feeling? Your voice matters in this community we're building together. This was their story. Messy, complicated, imperfect, and absolutely real. And that made it better than any fairy tale could ever be.